do? Yea, who knoweth not such things as these? I am as one mocked of his neighbor, who calleth upon God, and he answereth him. The just, upright man is laughed to scorn. He that is ready to slip with his feet is as a lamp despised in the thought of him that is at ease. The tabernacles of robbers prosper, and they that provoke God are secure, into whose hand God bringeth abundantly. But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind? Doth not the ear try words, and the mouth taste his meat? Let's bow for a word of prayer. Father, tonight as we consider this passage of Job, we see that Job has been patient and respectful in listening to his friends, but he is rebuking a little because that is what is truly needed. You are in control of all things, and you are the one that holds our life and our breath. And while we understand that, there are an awful lot of things about this world that we still do not understand. But as we draw towards the end of this book, it becomes more and more clear. We don't necessarily need to understand all things. We just need to trust the person who does. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Job is about had it. He starts off here in the first part with their system of thinking is cruel in verses 1 through 6. And he's going to respond here with I was going to say little irony, but it's not a little irony, it's a lot of it. Very, very sarcastic. No doubt, but ye are the people. Doubtless, in other words, it is obvious. Well, everybody can see. And you start a statement off like that, you probably have everybody's attention. But he follows it with, you are the people, and you are is plural. So we'd say, y'all. I mean, that's exactly what he says. He says, no doubt, or in other words, it's pretty obvious, it's plain for everybody to see that y'all are the important ones. Y'all are the significant ones. Y'all are the ones telling everyone that their opinion is best. We have this all the time. This is, sometimes you look around and you say, how in the world does mankind keep coming up with new ways? They don't. They just recycle. And back in Job's day, he had the movie stars, and he had the important politicians, and he had the big-name musicians, rock stars, if you will, and the artists who were making a lot of money, and the college professors, and the really wealthy, and the athletes, and they're weighing in and making it sound like their opinion's the only opinion that matters, and if you differ from their opinion, well, there's something wrong with you. And it comes out in phrases like, well, no self-respecting scientist would. In other words, if you differ from the way they look at something, then you're not a self-respecting professional person. And Job is knocking back against this, because this is what he's getting from his three friends here. Now, the only people that really matter in the world's eyes. This is a huge statement as he starts this reproof here of these guys. And you could say the only people that really matter in your eyes, guys. You're sitting here looking at me on a trash heap at my worst, and every time you open your mouth, you're passing judgment on me and telling me what an awful sinner I am. And it's pretty obvious to everybody that all y'all are the important ones. And he goes a step farther and he says, and wisdom shall die with you. Y'all are the only wise people in the whole world, and when you die, I'm afraid there won't be any left for anyone else. I don't know what we're going to do without you when the three of you are gone. I'm sitting here reading this and studying this. I had to stop for a minute and just clap. Attaboy, Job. Now think about this. He doesn't get angry and curse at them or yell at them, and he's not really being demeaning of them. He's just being very sarcastic to make them think about the way that they have approached him and what they have said to him so far. And this is the last of the first round of speeches, and so we're getting ready to start the second round of speeches. We'll see if anybody learns their lesson, but you can guess, right? He goes on and he says, I have understanding as well. You don't treat me like that. That's not what your speeches say. But I have understanding as well as you do, and I am not inferior to you. In other words, what he's saying is, I have a mind too. I have a brain. I didn't fall off the turnip truck. I wasn't born yesterday. We have a lot of phrases that we would say to somebody when we feel like they're insinuating that we're absolutely ignorant or our IQ is that of shoe leather. And he's being nice and saying the same things. And your thoughts and opinions are not the only ones. Nor are they more valid, because a lot of times that's the opinion that goes along with this thinking that these guys have thrown up here. It's pretty obvious to us. We have this moral compass that says, if you are holy and righteous, then you are blessed. And if you are sinful, then you are judged. And obviously, Job, since you have been really harshly judged, you must be an awful sinner. Well, that is the opinion of the three of you. And while it matters in your eyes, and while the world might even say it's important to them, you're not the only one with an opinion here, and your opinion is not more valid than my opinion, because I have understanding as well, and you are not even listening to me when I answer you in your speech. I am not inferior. In other words, you are not going to cast me down and make me fall. You can come at me and you can say all these harsh things. It's your fault the kids died. I saw it in a dream. I did this and I did this. And even the ancients know, and proverb after proverb that you've selected from history, you can keep throwing all this stuff at me, but I am not inferior. I will not, the word means to fall before. It says, you will not make me fall down. I am able to judge the methods and the meanings of divine work just as well as you can. And so even though you're being kind of hoity-toity in the way that you talk to me and in the advice that you give to me, I am able to discern what God's doing just as well as you're able to discern what God's doing. Why aren't you listening to me when I'm telling you that I don't understand why this is happening because I can't think of any secret sin? And you keep insisting that I have to be this terrible, awful, wicked person because these terrible, awful, wicked things keep happening to me. And he goes a step farther here, and I like the way he says this, because he basically says, who doesn't know what you have said? End of verse 3, who knoweth not such things as these? Now, you really haven't told me anything I haven't already known. You've gone on and on and on, and one of you had a big old dream that was supposed to have all this revelation behind it, but you boil it all down and you haven't told me anything that I don't already know. And mostly what you've told me are proverbs and sayings that are very commonly used, and so I've known all those proverbs and sayings, and Job probably knows some more. We'll talk about that in a minute, that they haven't picked up on yet. But then he's going to point out a problem with their system of thinking here. And that's what he starts in on verse 4. I am as one mocked of his neighbor. I am a joke to you. Or in other words, you're making a joke out of me. You are treating me with contempt, and you are treating me with mockery, and you're supposed to be my neighbor. And the word here would be better translated friends and companions than neighbors, because he's not talking about the people who necessarily live close to him. It's talking about the people that are close to him, friends and companions. Not just in vicinity, but in relationship, okay? This is a relationship word. And so he's saying here, you're supposed to be my friends and companions, and yet you're treating me this way. Now look at Psalm 55, 12 and 13. Reminder that, again, this isn't new either. because people are experiencing a form of betrayal, if you will. Psalm 55, starting in verse 12, "For it was not an enemy that reproached me." We expect that, right? You know, nobody likes to hear somebody say something harsh about you. But if an enemy's doing it, you kind of expect it. And so even though it hurts, it's not as bad. But he says, "Then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance." And that's where the hurt comes in. Because it's somebody that's close. It's somebody that you want to be able to rely on in these difficult situations. If you can picture in your mind what Job must have been feeling like when he saw his three friends approaching several chapters ago. I mean, it has been rough. And he sees the dust cloud, and three people come up, and pretty soon he recognizes them, and they get off their camels or whatever it is, and they come up and they sit with him in quiet for a week. 7 days of just sitting there with him in quiet. And I would imagine in his mind, he was probably thinking, man, these good old boys, it's a Lance term, these good old boys have showed up for me. I mean, how many people would come and just sit there quietly for 7 days to show their support? And he was probably excited when the first one got up to say something to him, because he thought, maybe he's going to give me a hug, even though not likely. Who knows if what he had was contagious, and he's definitely nasty, right? You can't overemphasize how nasty he was. But at least he's going to hug me like a friend from afar. His words are going to bring comfort. They're going to bring encouragement. They're going to, keep on hanging in there, Job. You can, God's good and he's going to take care of you. I don't know what he's trying to do, but they just start in on him, person after person after person, and these are his friends, his equals, his acquaintances. Deep hurt. Then he goes on and he says, "I am as one mocked of his neighbor." And the next point is, "who calleth upon God, and he answereth him." You keep telling me that the reason all of this stuff has happened to me is because I'm harboring all this secret sin, and I'm this wicked, wicked guy, because the judgment is so wicked that my life has to be so wicked. But wait a second, because my relationship with God is a problem to your system of thinking. I called on him, so I'm not a pagan. I haven't been ignoring. I'm not living my life without him. Boy, there are some passages in the New Testament that use the phrase "without God." That without God they did, and without God they did, and without God they did, and without God they did. Godless people living a godless life, and then they get to the end of their life and God says, "I hate everything you stand for." Well, basically, Job's saying the opposite. That's not me. I wasn't a godless person because I called on him. I worshiped him. I even worshiped him with my family and on behalf of my family. And you know what? He answered me. Why would he answer me in a personal relationship if I were such a wicked individual that brought on this wicked judgment? There's a big problem with your system of thinking, guys. Job knows more about God. And more importantly, Job has experienced more about God from the way all three of these men talk. They know some Sunday school. They know some religion. But they don't really know God, and they don't talk as if they have a close personal relationship with him. Yet the guy on the trash heap who's been through the worst of it, listening to these three folks berate him, when he responds to them without interrupting. I got to say that every time we get done one of their speeches, he lets them finish, hard as it is to listen to. That's character. And then he answers them with truth about God, and then asks us questions. Boys, I just really like to know why. The just and the blameless man, he's going to talk about here at the end of the verse. A just, upright man is laughed to scorn. Boy, this is a big thing. You see what he's saying here is, you are making a mockery of me. I am a joke to you. But you know what? It's a shame when a just and blameless man, and those are the words that God uses about him, is made a laughingstock. In Genesis chapter 6 and verse 9, that description is used of Noah. Going to be a flood, build me a boat. And it's not one day, it's 100 years of it. I mean, he goes out to build the boat, and every day he's got to listen to folks who gather just to sit there and make fun of him and make a laughingstock of the only one that is just and blameless. That tells you the condition of what was going on there. It's a big statement here about the condition of the three friends. In Matthew chapter 5, let's turn there. We're going to be in Matthew in just a second anyway, so Matthew chapter 5 and verse 12, this is said of the prophets. Let's start in verse 11. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. How many of the prophets, minor prophets all the way through the major prophets up until the time of Christ, had to deal with the same thing? A holy man and a blameless man, a just man, being made a laughingstock and being made fun of. And then Matthew chapter 27 and verse 29. And we're not going to turn to all these passages, but I do want to turn to this first one. The point of all points, Jesus at his trial. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! You cannot find a more just and righteous individual, and yet here they are making a laughingstock of them. It happens again in Luke chapter 23, verses 35 through 37. They're out on the cross, and the guards are making fun of him when they go to give him vinegar. They've been sitting there watching the crowd make fun of him, and they just join right in. Going to make a laughingstock of you at your worst time. Which makes me think, maybe a big reason why God includes the book of Job for us is for us to consider what contradiction of sinners Jesus Christ endured. I mean, this is one of those situations where somebody who is just and blameless, and I know he wasn't perfect and he wasn't the sinless Son of God, but he is somebody that God holds up and says, this is a really righteous man. And situation after situation after situation that he did nothing wrong, he has to endure. And we know from the Gospels that Jesus Christ was not looking forward to the cross with joy. He was concerned about his Father turning his back on him, and he was concerned about becoming sin for those that knew no sin. What a weight. Here we see a little bit of it again. And go back to our passage and let's look at the reason for the problem, because Job's going to explain to us why he feels that this goes on. And again, this goes on today too. The reason for the problem, he that is ready to slip with his feet is as a lamp despised in the thought of him that is at ease. Lamps, you had a candle or you had a shock or something like that, and you'd light it on fire or bind it up or make a torch or whatever. Well, a lot of those are disposable. When they're about ready to go out, you get down to the very end of the candle, you can't just refill the candle, so you throw it on the ground and stomp it out. It's despised. There's no use for it anymore. Oh well, nice to have that candle. I'll have to go find another candle. The disposable idea. Those who are at ease despise the suffering and the misfortune of those who are in the middle of it. Misfortune is thought to be an evidence of sin. So you have this self-justification and this self-righteousness that goes on. Well, if this person is suffering misfortune, it has to be because of sin, and our first response is, I'm not suffering misfortune, so I must be Okay. And I have to be more righteous than this guy, or I'd be in the same situation he is. So rather than having compassion on the individual that's suffering, we kind of take the other road and withdraw ourselves and look down on them because it makes me feel better. Psalm 123 in verse 4. Our soul is exceeding filled with the scorn of those that are at ease, and with the contempt of the proud. Now, they're not worried necessarily about helping you. They're just superior because they're not in your situation. But go with me to Psalm 73. Let's look at the real deal here. Because it's easy sometimes to lose perspective, and I think that's what's happening with the friends. Psalm 73, you have a righteous individual who is crying out to God, and he says, "But as for me, my feet were almost gone." Well, got to look down on him because I'm justified and self-righteous in what I'm doing because my feet aren't almost gone, right? I mean, that's the thinking of the friends. This is the thinking system that they have. And it says, "My steps had well nigh slipped." He gives us the reason in verse 3, "For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." And so you look around at this situation that's going on here and you say, something is not right. How are these wicked people being prosperous? And it started to wear on him, and it started to get to him, and he was losing his view of God, and he was questioning things to the point where he says, "Whoa, man, yeah, I'm getting on some dangerous ground here. My feet almost slipped out from under me." And it isn't because God was judging him because of sin. It's something he was doing to himself in response to things that he didn't understand as he looked around. The answer to it is found down in verses 17 through 19. "Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation as in a moment? They are utterly consumed with terrors." Yeah, they seem to be getting away with it, and they seem to be getting away with it, but then I all of a sudden realized, wait a second, in one moment they are cast into hell. And there is not anything worse that could happen to them, and they're there for all eternity. And so while for a short while here on earth, these wicked people seem to get away with all this stuff, they are on a slippery slope, and their feet are coming out from under them, and when they do, God judges them for all eternity. And so while they seem to get away with it right now, it's because the judgment doesn't always happen right away. Well, that's a problem for these guys thinking, right? Isn't that a problem? You could be caught up in the wrong thinking, and the way to fix that is to make it right with God's thinking. Big problem he is presenting here to the guys and hoping that they'll actually think it through. "In the thought of him that is at ease." It's easy when you're on one side of the ash heap to have a lot of thoughts and to think you're right and to not be careful about how you respond to the person that's on the other side in the ash heap. Failure does not mean inferior. Look at verses 6 through 11. Now, their thinking system is trivial. He starts off with a false premise here. "I'm pretty sure y'all boys are wrong. Now, let me tell you how I know you're wrong. Because the tabernacles of robbers prosper, number one, and they that provoke God are secure, number two, into whose hand God bringeth abundantly, number three." He lays out these three things that destroy this false premise of their thinking. Now, whole basis, the foundation of their thinking, godliness equals prosperity, sinfulness equals struggle and judgment. Eliphaz says that in chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. other passages as well, but these are just one example from their speech. Bildad says it in chapter 8, verses 6 and 20, and Zophar here has gone on in chapter 11, verses 6, 14, 19, and 20. So all three friends have jumped on this same bandwagon. This has to be happening to you, Job, because godliness equals prosperity and blessing, and sinfulness equals struggle and judgment. But, hey boys, have you ever considered that facts oppose that theory? What about the tabernacles of robbers prosper? Well, it seems like robbers have prosperity from stealing. You say, well, I don't know, they get caught and they end up in jail. Not all of them. Now think about all of the theft that goes on that nobody catches and that they benefit from. Think of the pyramid schemes and the corruption and the fraud and the insider trading and the congressional trading, because that's a whole new level of insider trading. Just in the last few years, how much fraud has been uncovered. I mean, it just starts staggering your mind. And while it's uncovered, how much in the last year or two have you heard people being put in handcuffs and going to trial? And if you steal $1 billion and you go to court and they make you give back 15 million of it, have you prospered? Bernie Madoff rips off all kinds of people on Wall Street. He has to give back a third of the money. They can't find the rest of it. When he gets out of jail, he disappears and he's on some island somewhere living La Vida Loca. And you say, well, he went to jail. Seriously? I mean, how well could you live the rest of your life on millions of dollars? It is this concept. Robbers sometimes prosper. And to your line of thinking, fellas, shouldn't God be like throwing lightning bolts at them and giving them diseases and all kinds of stuff? Second one, those that despise, blaspheme, and provoke God are secure. They're not running around living in fear. Is that true? Well, sure it is. You can have people stand up on national media and take under God out of, they're not sitting there worried God's going to throw a lightning bolt at them when they vote. You can have folks stand up and say some of the most blasphemous, loud-mouthed, foul-mouthed things. They're not living their life like God's going to throw a lightning bolt at them. And Job's saying, well, wait a second. If your premise of all of your arguments is true, shouldn't he be judging them? And then the third one, God still gives general blessings. He still gives the ungodly rain. He still gives the ungodly sunshine. They still sometimes benefit from good business practices. They even seem to get away with it for a while. And that goes against the argument that y'all are bringing up here. Then he moves on in verses 7 through 11 and says, let's look at the testimony of creation. Now this is a really interesting section, and some of it could mean a couple of different things. Again, it's poetry. Is he looking back, or is he looking forward, or is it just taken as it is? But in verses 7 and 8, he talks about animals, birds, plants, and fish. Ask now the beasts, the animals, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee, or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. And in verses 7 through 8, he uses 3 different verbs to describe how they will teach you and educate you. But the point is that God created them all, and yet eagles and vultures and falcons seem to live better than doves and blue jays and robins. And you have lions who are a whole lot more secure than deer and cattle and antelope. And then you have sharks and whales, and they seem to be a whole lot more secure than the fish and the penguins. Cute little penguins. All these whale sharks eating them like it's nothing. And you have weeds. My goodness, I walk through the woods almost on the daily. And you know what just about never dies? Greenbriers. I mean, you can be walking through the woods in the middle of January, and next thing you know, they got you and they're ripping deep. It's not like the first little onslaught of cold and the greenbriers can't take it. And they have to wait until it's nice and warm in the spring before they come back. Weeds will choke out flowers in no time, right? Kudzu will crawl over everything and absolutely kill it. He's saying God created them all, and yet you have fish with teeth that are eating the fish without teeth. Explain to me, fellas, how you're saying that God only works like this. Are you telling me that the fish without teeth are the awful wicked ones and the fish with teeth are the holy just ones? Are you telling me that when an eagle swoops down and picks up some helpless prey, it's because he's holy and righteous and the helpless prey was a sinful little squirrel and needed judgment? But what's really interesting about this section here in these two verses is the singular form of you may indicate that Job is responding to them saying this of him. You should ask all of creation because they all know that God is doing this to you, Job. And if that's true, look at how he responds here in verses 9 and 10. Well, duh. That's my version. There is no question that God's doing it. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this? Are you kidding me? Can you hear Job? He's being really nice, but he's saying, yes, all creation knows that the Creator is the controller and the sustainer. But some are designed to be predators, and some are designed to be prey. And so you have this battle that goes on. Do the predators know why they're predators? And do the prey know why they're prey? Do we even understand why God set things up that way? None of them understand the why. But they all understand the who. The Creator is the one who controls who lives and who dies. But the why did God have to judge the soil when man sinned and bring forth briars? Why did animals have to start eating each other after the flood? Because they didn't before the flood. Why did animals have to have the fear of man after the flood when they didn't before the flood? So you see what Job is saying. They all know that God is doing it, but like me, they don't know why. And I know that God's doing it. I just really like to know why he's doing it. God does as he wants to in designing them, and God does what he wants to in maintaining them. He makes the statement, he controls the life of every living thing. In whose hand is the soul of every living thing? And he controls every breath you take and the breath of all mankind. Numbers 16:22. I'm going to turn there real quick and read that for you. And then the rest we will allude to. Numbers 16 and verse 22. And they fell upon their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with all the congregation? What were they afraid of? Well, how many times was there sin in the camp and God judged them? Ai's a perfect example of that, right? They just had a big victory. They send a small army up because it's a small city. Achan's the one that sinned. Why did those people have to die and lose the battle? Because they didn't have anything to do with Achan's sin. And it's easy for us to look at it and say, well, I don't understand why. But the thing that Job's bringing out here is you have to understand that the God of the universe controls every breath you take, and he controls the life of every living thing. And he doesn't have to answer to you and me, but I'd like to know why. In Daniel chapter 5 and verse 23, Nebuchadnezzar's getting big for his britches. And Daniel has to go in and talk to him. And that's what he says. I'm sorry to tell you, King, but it's going to get really rough on you until you understand that the God of heaven controls the breath of every living thing. You know what Nebuchadnezzar says after he's been acting like a wild oxen out there and his hair's grown out, and he comes back and he says, now I understand that the God of heaven is the one who controls the breath of every living thing. Same thing in Acts chapter 17, the first part of verse 28. For in him we live and move and have our being. There isn't any aspect of our life that he doesn't know about and he doesn't control. Again, Job's not questioning who it is that's doing to him. Who's doing it to him? He's just wondering why. Then he's going to bring this all together here. And the way he does it is kind of a challenge to these guys moving forward, that they'll pay a little bit better attention. He says, people were created with discernment. Look at verse 11. Doth not the ear try words, and the mouth taste his meat? Two examples. You have the ear and the mouth. The ear listens to discern and interpret sound. What is it? First of all, walked out on the porch to come down here, and I hear this noise, and I'm like, pause for a second, and I'm listening, because I thought, wow, must be getting colder outside. That train is really echoing up from down below. Only it wasn't a train, it was the wind. You know, you listen a little bit and your ear discerns, well, difference between a train and the wind. You're also trying to figure out, well, do I like it or do I dislike it? You're listening to nice music and you say, boy, this is relaxing, this is peaceful, this is a masterpiece of music. And then somebody starts practicing the trumpet and they've only played for 2 days and it's a little rough to listen to. You wish you could fast forward a few years. And then you're also listening to discern the meaning. Somebody says something to you. Who was it that said it? What did they say? What does it mean? How do I respond? All this goes through the ear. Mouth is the same thing. What am I eating? Is it bitter? Is it sweet? Is it cold or is it hot? Do I like it? Do I dislike it? Is it mushy? Is it solid? Do I need to chew it? Can I just swallow it? And the reason that he uses these two examples is he's unloading three meanings here that have great importance. The first one could be an explanation of himself. I have been sitting here listening to your arguments, and I do not comply with your speeches because I don't agree with them after listening and thinking it through and discerning it. A friend told me one time everybody has the right to say something. And when they do, consider the source. Are they right? Is what they said worthwhile? Switch those two. And what do I do based on it? And he said a lot of times it's walk away and forget about it. Well, Job's doing the same thing. He's saying, I listened to you all. I heard you patiently. And then I thought about it. And then I was using my discernment. And I feel like the way you talk to me, what you have to say, and what you think of God is all messed up. So I'm not acting upon it. That's the first one. Second one, it could be a rebuke of his friends. They have been very quick to reprove him and condemn him without serious thought and without proper discernment. One friend stands up and he says a lot of the same thing. Job responds to him. And then the second friend stands up and it's a lot of the same thing that the first friend said. Doesn't seem like they've considered anything that Job said. Same thing happens with the third friend, only he says, how long are we going to have to sit here and listen to you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk? Why don't you shut up and sit down? And Job's saying, you know, y'all have ears and you have mouth because God gives us discernment. How come you are not using serious thought and proper discernment? You've used the word of the elders and you're picking out some of these proverbs, but you're only picking the proverbs that meet your position, that meet your way of thinking, and all the rest of them don't matter. And the last part as we close, maybe his prefacing to what he is about to say, because he's going to talk about God here in just a minute, and he wants them to perk up and pay attention and consider some things. Will you carefully hear and judge my words without jumping to the same conclusion in haste over and over and over again? And do not scorn what I have said, because I'm sitting on an ash heap and I don't look good and I don't feel good and I've lost everything. Just because I'm not wealthy and dressed in fine clothes and having a dinner party doesn't mean that what I say doesn't have value. And lastly, it's probably a challenge. It sure would be nice if you'd use a little discernment in responding to me instead of just condemning me every time you open your mouth to say something. What an incredible way to start this discussion with his friends. You hammer me and you hammer me and you hammer me. I know God's doing this, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But like the creatures, I just sometimes can't help but wonder why. I wish I could talk with him. I wish I could hear from him. He stays silent, and I want to hear what he has to say about it, because that would make it all better. When I had gone to the sanctuary, and Job saying, I don't feel like I can go to the sanctuary because this is one of those times where God's not saying anything and it's killing me. Praises or prayer requests?